Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Dan Will Lobby podcast. Now, I'm going to tell you something that you already know. Leading is important. Leaving is even more important. In fact, you can't be a good leader unless you've planned your exit. Leaving is the final exam of leadership. But here's a question that you and I oftentimes run into. Maybe we don't ask ourselves openly, but we ask ourselves internally. Why do some people leave well and some people leave the organization that they were leading for so long in flames? What makes somebody able to leave well and other people are terrible at it? Why is that? Well, here's the thing. You and I, we all want to matter. We all want to make a difference. We all want to build something. We all want to leave a legacy. We all want to do work that matters. We all want to be in the center of something that's making the world a better place, that's really sort of making people's lives better. We all want to be, in some way, indispensable. It leaves us feeling like we are the only ones that can do a specific task. We're the only ones with the connections. We're the only ones with the ideas. We're the only ones with the discipline. And when somebody says, wow, you are indispensable to this organization, I mean, gosh, that really feels like a compliment, doesn't it? It's not. In fact, if you're a great leader and someone says you're indispensable, that might as well be an insult because it says a lot about the organization's ability to thrive when you're not there. Let me tell you why this topic is so important. The idea of being indispensable, that's a trap. And if you're not careful, you will go your whole career. I've seen it happen. And we'll build something that only works with us at the center of it. And then when we walk away, inevitably, because the exit is coming for everybody, when we walk away, the thing that we spent our entire career building dies. All right, here's what I know about you. As a leader, you want to leave in the best way possible. You've built something that's extraordinary. You built something that matters. You spent your whole career thinking about how to build something that actually makes a difference in the lives of your friends, your family, your neighbors, and your coworkers. But then when it comes time to leave, oftentimes you and I don't put enough thought into it. In fact, leaving is actually two distinct acts. The first one is you deciding the date that you're going to leave, figuring out exactly when this is going to be over. Whether you're 65, whether you're 35, when are you going to leave? When are you going to walk away? When is this going to be done? When are you going to move on? That's the first one. But then the second one is the actual exit. It's you saying goodbye. It's you treating people a certain way. It's you leaving the place better than how you found it. And most importantly, it's how people feel about you on the way out the door. There's the deciding about the exit, and then there's the actual exit itself. Leaving comes in two different parts. And that's the distinct problem. Most people think the exit is a single moment. They think it's a final email. They think it's the day they turn their keys in or the day they walk out the door, the day they get that final party. But it's not. The exit oftentimes happens way before the actual final day. The exit says everything about who you've become along the way. In fact, the exit, you're leaving, is the final exam of leadership. It's the last thing you do before you walk out the door. And oftentimes, to do an exit well, it takes years. Let me give you two examples of leaving that serve as an excellent example of how to do it well and then how to do it absolutely horribly. Let's start with the first one, how to do it horribly. Let's go back to 2010. LeBron James is 25 years old. He's sitting in Greenwich, Connecticut. He's sitting in the middle of a boys and girls club, and he's getting ready to give the biggest sentence in his entire life. There's 10 million people who are watching live on TV. There's little kids in the room that are at the Boys and Girls Club watching it live. He has Jim Gray, legendary sportscaster, sitting in front of him, and Jim Gray then asks him a single question that changes his entire career. Jim Gray says, hey, we are all here. I'm paraphrasing. Jim Gray says, we are all here to hear you answer this one question. LeBron, what's your decision? This is the moment that actually ended up being called the decision. Like, it is a huge moment in Cleveland history. What's your decision, LeBron? And then LeBron, he's like stumbling, he's fumbling, he looks like he's nervous, and he's like, you know what? This is really hard, but this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach. I'm going to leave Cleveland, essentially. I'm going to walk away from 7 years of carrying this team on my back. I'm ready to win a championship. I want to go play with my friend Dwayne Wade in Miami. I'm tired of being in Cleveland. I'm ready to leave. So he basically says, I'm leaving the team on live TV in front of 10 million people. And Cleveland finds out exactly the same time everybody else finds out. Fast forward about 60 seconds. People in bars all over Cleveland were watching this live. They leave the bars. They take the jersey off their heads. They get lighters and lighter fluid. And literally in the streets of Cleveland, real time, they set his jersey on fire spontaneously all over the city. People are burning his jersey on their own without coordination or prompting. It's a spontaneous reaction of unbelievable anger. It's all over the 11 o'clock news. That's not it. Then the Cavs owner, about an hour later, Dan Gilbert, he gets online and he posts something that has lived in infamy forever. He basically says in all caps that the Cavs will win a championship before LeBron James does. And he calls him a traitor. He calls him an idiot. He calls him every name in the book. He is just spewing venom. And then he posts it on the Cavs website for, get this, 4 years. 4 years he leaves it on the Cavs website. So everybody knows what they're chasing. They're going to get a championship before LeBron does. That's how LeBron left Cleveland in 2010. And here's why this is important to you. Minutes before he made his decision on live TV in front of 10 million people, he was beloved. People in Cleveland worshiped him. The second after he left, he was the worst. He was hated like you wouldn't believe. His leaving completely erased his leadership. Now, fast forward 16 years. LeBron James, he's 41 years old. He's been in the league for longer than anybody. He's the oldest guy in the league by far. He is an old man, but he's still got some moves. He's going into his very last season with the Lakers. And going through the whole season, he's wondering if he should leave. He's wondering if this is the last season. He's wondering if he should go somewhere else. He's wondering if he should retire. He doesn't know. And then finally he gets to the end of the season, right after the season's over. He has this opportunity to make a decision. What does he do? 16 years later, almost the exact same scenario. What does he do? Well, he's ready to leave. He knows his time is up. But instead of calling a press conference, instead of having 10 million people watch it live, he picks up the phone and he calls the Lakers himself. He calls the general manager. He calls the owner. He calls the president and basically says, guys, thank you, but I'm out. I'm going to try something else somewhere else. And you know what the Lakers do? They give him a public thank you. They write an amazing letter of all the time that he's been on the team. They tell him all the things that he's done for the organization. They thank him profusely. He comes back and he thanks them profusely, publicly. Because honestly, it was a great relationship. And LeBron learned that his leadership is defined by his leaving. The leaving is the final exam of leadership. And over those last 16 years, he studied how to leave. And he aced the final exam. No drama, no cameras, no burned jerseys in the streets, no major the decision moment, none of that. Just respect. Let's take a quick time out for a second. Let me tell you my personal thoughts on LeBron. Now, LeBron and I grew up about 40 minutes from each other. We are literally the exact same age by 2 weeks. And I've watched his career grow as I played basketball and he played basketball. And I watched him get drafted and watched him move from Cleveland to Miami to Los Angeles to wherever he goes next. One of the things that strikes me most about watching his career, with all the mistakes that he's made and all the things that he's done wrong and all the reasons why people don't like him, the number one thing that I've seen over and over and over again that sets him apart from any other basketball player I have ever seen at any level is his son, Bronny. If you don't know the story, LeBron has a son that plays in the NBA and competes, but he's with his son on the same team. Jordan is phenomenal. Where are his sons? Shaq also has sons. They're not in the NBA. Kobe Bryant, he has daughters, not nearly as good as Bronny. To be able to play at a high level, to keep your family intact, to be able to invest in your kids, and then to also be able to find a way to help them get to the highest level possible, that is another level of leadership. That says that what's happening on the front stage that we can all see is not nearly as deep and complex and serious as LeBron takes his life in the backstage. The way he deals with his family, the way he handles his health, the way he handles his personal business, never gets in trouble for literally anything. The example he sets for his kids, that's the true tell of real leadership. If you want to know if somebody's an actual leader, ask their family. They'll tell you. If you want to know if somebody's an actual leader, watch how their kids grow and progress and how they get better over time. That's how you can tell someone is an actual leader. Okay, let's go back to that moment in Connecticut. So LeBron is sitting there and he makes the decision, right? And so you remember that moment. If you go on YouTube, you can see the burning jerseys. You can see the decision he makes. You can watch him sweating in real time. You can see the nervousness. You can see all of that. But here's what you can't see. And here's what you probably forgot. If you remember that moment, you probably forgot that in that moment, LeBron and his team raised $2 million for kids. The kids sitting right there in that room benefited from the decision. They got $2 million to renovate their Boys and Girls Club. That was the purpose of the entire thing. It was a major fundraiser. It was supposed to do good. It was supposed to be a win-win-win for everybody. But the truth is, the manner of the exit destroyed any semblance of people remembering the good that he did. All you remember is the fire, the anger, the gnashing of teeth. That's all you remember. And frankly, that's all I remember. Because that's what happened when he left so poorly. You see, when you leave a certain way, it papers over every single act of leading that you did years before that. All people remember isn't how you led. All they remember is how you left and how it made them feel. This happened to a friend of mine years ago. He was a pastor. He did a fantastic job leading a congregation. He loved it. He loved the work. He loved the people. But somewhere along the way, he stayed a little bit too long. And as things got towards the end of his career, he wasn't exactly sure how to leave. But at the same time, he was also running out of energy. Sometimes you get a little older. Sometimes you lose vision. Sometimes you really can't figure out how to solve some major problems in your organization. And that's what he was going through. And so he just didn't plan an exit. He just didn't solve those problems. He just didn't find a way to get more energy. And things just got worse and worse and worse until it got so bad that the board literally had to fire him. He had been there for nearly a decade and had done some great work. But because he stayed too long, because he didn't think about his exit, his act of leaving overshadowed everything that he'd done to lead years before. And now, when you go back to the church and people talk about him, all they can talk about is how he finally ended poorly. Here's what I want you to understand. Leaving isn't just about figuring out how you're going to exit. It's not just figuring out how you're going to leave. Leaving is actually an x-ray into who you're becoming along the way. The person who can leave well, who can walk out the door and things are better than when they found them, is a certain kind of person. It's a person that's been formed in a certain kind of way. It's a person who cares about the organization more than they care about their own status. All along the way in their leadership, they were building slowly towards that moment of exit. The only way to leave well is to be the kind of person that develops other people, that creates an environment that sustains the organization without the leader being in the center of it. The kind of leader that leaves well is the kind of person that thinks years ahead, beyond their own personal status and beyond their own personal productivity. The kind of leader that leaves well is the kind of leader that is being developed along the way to think about others before themselves and to plan their exit so the organization soars after they're gone. The leaving is an x-ray to who you've been becoming the entire time while you were leading. Okay, so if you're sitting here listening to this and you're saying, all right, Dan, I get it. I get it. I want to leave well. It's a major part of my leadership. It's my final exam and I want to ace it. What do I need to do? Well, that's what the rest of this podcast is all about. But right now, what I want to do is I want to give you 3 things that you can do immediately to start thinking differently about your exit. 3 things that you can do right now, not at retirement, not when you walk out the door, not when you take a new position at a different company, not when you sell the company, but right now. Step number one, I want you to think about the week after you leave. You were already gone. Like somebody's in your office, somebody's parked in your parking spot, somebody has your title, whatever, but you're gone. Now, people are talking about you, not at your retirement party, but they're talking about you in the hallway. They're using your name. They're recalling specific memories. What do you want people to be saying about you? Think about that deeply. What do you want people to be saying about you after you're gone? Be specific. What do you want them to feel about your presence in the organization after you're gone? Step number two, now work backwards. I want you to write that down. Write what you want people to actually say about you when you're gone, in casual conversation. What do you want them to be saying about you? Write it down. And then ask yourself this question: what about your leadership today is working to make that true? What are you doing right now to make sure that when you're gone, people will be saying that about who you are as a person? And here's a bonus question. What are the things that you're doing today that are actually making it harder for people to say that about you? Are there specific things that you're doing that are undercutting your legacy and are making it hard for people to say all the positive things about the work that you've done? What's the sentiment going to be? Make sure you write that down. And what are you doing right now to help advance that? Here's the third one. Step number three. Make sure you put that card somewhere where you can see it. Here's the big idea. Your exit should always be within your eyesight. You should be able to see it. This is what I want people to say about me when I'm leaving. You should have that somewhere where you can see it and say, this is what the end is going to look like. If I plan things well, if I treat people right, if I make sure I lead my team well, this is what the exit is going to look like. So it's not a surprise. You're not planning this exit 2 days before you actually leave. You're planning how people will perceive you and how they'll feel about you years before the actual moment comes. Just put it in front of you and make sure that your exit is always within your eyesight. Look, I want you to imagine with me. What if you stop treating your exit like an afterthought? What if the very next thing you started, if you started on a board, you start a new company, you start a new position within the company, whatever, the next thing you start, you have your exit in mind right away. And you say, when I leave, this is what people are going to be thinking about me. Right now, before you get into any of the details, as you're starting, you do the Stephen Covey thing, and you begin with the end in mind. You make sure your exit is within your eyesight the entire time you're working on that new thing. What if you didn't wait until the very last day of your exit before you started thinking about how you're going to leave? What if it was the most well thought out, well planned thing you ever did? What if you treated your exit like it really is, the final exam of your leadership? Imagine how your life could change. Imagine how you would treat people differently. Imagine how it would feel walking out that door the very last time, knowing you did everything you possibly could to leave this organization better than when you found it. Hey, but let me shoot straight with you here. This is far easier said than done. I mean, I get it. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're the kind of person that's not afraid of work. Like, you love doing hard things. You love challenging yourself. You love building things that matter. You're an entrepreneur. You're an executive. You're an owner. You really love pushing the envelope. You love doing what you've been called to do, what you've been made to do. You wake up in the morning and you enjoy going to work. You found a way to figure out how to do what you love every day. And exiting is the last thing on your mind. Like, you don't want to exit. Like, that's not what you're interested in doing. You know, look, you've been made to do something and you're doing it well. And so why would you be thinking about when that's over? Why would you be thinking about when you're done? Ultimately, thinking about an exit oftentimes is the most unnatural thing for a high achiever to do because they love the work. They love the grind. They love the day-to-day. There's nothing else they would rather do than the work that they're doing right now. But this isn't about you. If you're building something that matters, if you're making a difference in the world, you're also paving a way for the people coming behind you. You're doing what you love, which is great, but that's only half the equation. You're doing what you love, and then you're preparing the way for other people to continue doing what they love after you're gone. And so you have to find a way to start thinking about what the world looks like when you're no longer doing that thing in that seat anymore. And that might be a little bit of a shift. And by far, it is easier said than done. But I'll shoot straight with you. You want to think about your exit today and not 2 days before the actual exit. The reality will hit you harder than you believe. Let me tell you a story about a guy named John. We'll call him John. John was a brilliant business guy. I mean, he loved it and he was good at it. He had a specialized gift company. And so he was really good at picking the right products, developing the right products, networking with the right people, making sure that the organization was running really well. He even had a great sense for where the market was going. He understood really clearly how to position the product and how to please the customer in a way that made sure the company was thriving year over year over year. John was what I'd like to call an indispensable leader. But again, like we said earlier, the problem with being indispensable is that eventually you become irreplaceable. John was so good at figuring out where the market was going, so good at networking, so good at product development, so good at finance, so good at team leadership that he never needed to develop systems. He never needed to develop other people. He never needed to write down exactly how he knew what was going to happen next and what indicators he looked for and what he was looking for in a great product and what really made the whole company hum. He didn't really put any of it down on paper. He just hired people to support his unique genius. He made himself irreplaceable, indispensable. And so then there was a day that came where John finally wanted to walk away. And he tried to sell his company to private equity, but honestly, they can see right through that. If there's a founder at the center and no one else has the skills that the founder does, the company is worth significantly less. His best bet was to sell the company back to the employees in an ESOP. And so he did, an employee-owned company. That's what the company was now. And everybody was happy. John walked away with his investment into the company after years of work. The employees, they got the company back and they started getting to work right away. And then they realized that they had just purchased something that was really strange. It was a company that was finely tuned, that understood its clients, that really understood its product, that really understood the market, that really understood finance and leadership. It was a company that was finely tuned to fit perfectly around its founder. And its founder wasn't there anymore. The engine that drove the company had left. And so what they had was essentially nothing. So for years they struggled. They tried to figure out how to do the things that John did. They said, oh, it can't be that hard. We'll figure it out. And then the market took a dip, a real serious dip. And now they're trying to figure out how to run the company under unbelievable pressure. Fast forward a couple years, they couldn't do it. And the company that John had spent decades building fell apart in an instant. Overnight, shut its doors, sold for parts and a fraction of what it had been worth at its peak. It's a sad story. Hundreds of people lost their jobs, all because John, who was brilliant in his heyday, had made himself indispensable and essentially irreplaceable. Now, I admit that is a sad story. When everybody loses their jobs and when John looks at his company, it's just in ashes. Like that is a sad story, especially if you're an executive, entrepreneur, or owner and you want to build something that lasts and makes a difference. That is one of the worst things that could happen. But let's not be too hard on John, because oftentimes that shows up for you and I in 100 different ways. But just earlier in the story, like, for example, you love the work you do. You love working hard. You love focusing on the job. You love building your company or your organization. You love excellence. And then one day somebody comes and suggests a successor, somebody to take over for you. And there's something in you that's like, ugh, really? That guy? Really? That girl? That lady? And you find something that's wrong. They're just not old enough. They're just not visionary enough. They're just not detailed enough. They're just not whatever. enough. And you tell yourself that it's actually high standards. Look, I really do care about our customers. I really do care about our product. I really do care about this company. I care about this organization. So I have high standards for the person that's going to come in and lead. Of course you do. Of course you do. Or maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's that your identity is fused with your position. Maybe the idea of somebody taking over feels like it threatens your security. Maybe just the idea that someone can do the job as good as you makes you feel deeply insecure about whether you're actually indispensable. Maybe you're not as good as you thought. Maybe it's not as hard as you thought. Maybe somebody else could come in and do a different job, a better job. Maybe you're not as indispensable or irreplaceable as you thought. That's a hard reality to sit with. And oftentimes, for you and for me as leaders, we would rather just find a reason to kill the successor than to face the fact that we might be replaceable. Now, I ran into this years ago. So in leading Branches, and if you don't know this, Branches is an international leadership consulting firm that works with executives, entrepreneurs, and owners in 35 countries around the world. And as I was starting Branches, it was hard. I mean, so hard. And I was dreaming of the day that I could just give up the things that I wasn't very good at to a team of people who were great at that. And I could do the thing that only I could do. I was dreaming of a day where I could actually sit in the CEO seat and do what I did well. I could get rid of all this day-to-day small stuff. And honestly, it took years and years and years of hard work to finally hire an incredible team. We have an amazing team that does so much of the day-to-day work that drives the company and drives our impact around the world. And so I get the privilege of getting to sit and talk to you. I get to share the story of Branches around the world. I get to network with incredible people. I get to think about the organization 10 years out, 20 years out. I really get to think about things at a high level. I get to write books. I get to talk to you. I get to do all kinds of great things. But the transition from being in the president's seat to being the CEO seat, that was far more painful than I thought. Let me tell you about it. It turned out I loved the day-to-day. I loved the hustle and bustle. I loved being in the center of the action. I loved knowing what was happening. I loved that people were coming to me with questions. I loved that I was answering emails that mattered. I loved that every decision I made had an immediate effect on the organization that day or the next day or the next day. I loved being immediately relevant. When I passed off the presidency to another guy who's unbelievably skilled and talented, Chris, he's doing a great job. I didn't have a lot of day-to-day responsibilities. And so I would kind of swing by the office and kind of look in the windows and say, hey, what are you guys working on today? I mean, I kind of knew, but I didn't know the details, and I wanted to get in the action. I wanted to know what was going on. There were some days where I would come in and I would exercise what you call seagull leadership. You ever heard of that? Seagull leadership is where I would fly in to a meeting that I wasn't invited to. I would crap on everything, and then I'd turn around and I would fly out. And everyone's like, what the heck just happened? That was my leadership for a while because I wanted to be in the action. In fact, it got so bad that I actually had to move my office outside of the main office. I had to take my office home so I wouldn't always swing by every 30 seconds and peek in the windows and try to figure out what's happening. Well, the truth is that was a great lesson for me because it is hard to be a little bit irrelevant in your own organization. But as you release power, as you give up authority, as you train people to do the work, it automatically means you move to a different seat and you move to a different level. And there is some real loss there. And I had to reckon with that. Sitting in the CEO seat didn't feel the same as sitting in the midst of the action. If you and I were hanging out for any length of time, you would start to hear almost right away one of my personal passions. I love helping executives, entrepreneurs, and owners build businesses that benefit their communities. And if that's you, if you're building something that's going to make a difference in your community, I would love to help you with that. I would love to have my organization, Branches, help you with that. Make sure you click the link in the show notes and tell us a little bit more about what we can do to help you. We work with people all over the globe, helping them fine-tune their businesses, helping them generate more revenue, helping them figure out how to lead their teams with excellence. I'd love to help you do the same thing. This reminds me of a study that I ran into years ago by a guy named Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. Now, he was a Yale researcher, and one of the things he tried to figure out was what is the difference between CEOs that leave well and CEOs that leave poorly? Exactly what I was feeling when I was leaving my position. And here's what he found. He interviewed hundreds of CEOs, and he sat down with dozens of people face to face. And here's what he found. It's about how they think of their role while they're leading. Here's the thing. He came up with two different types of CEOs at least. There was monarchs and there was ambassadors. And the key difference between the two was their identity. The monarchs had their identity fused with their position. The ambassadors didn't. They found a way to separate their character from their career. Monarchs, they couldn't even imagine leaving. Their identity was so fused in the work that they were doing that ultimately at the end of the day, they had to be carried out on a stretcher. They had to be carried out, dragged out. They had to be pulled out of the organization. They weren't leaving because even leaving their position, even the thought of leaving their position felt like death. And so monarchs, when they left, it was just a dumpster fire because there was no planning, no preparation, only the idea that they were indispensable. But then ambassadors, on the other hand, their character was not fused with their career. That means they did a couple things differently. Number one, they picked their exit. Number two, they trained the successor. Number three, they handed over their keys before they left. Number four, they gave people time to learn and develop while they were still there. They figured out how to develop people without hovering, without micromanaging, without running off the successor. They figured out how to do the handoff well. And so when they finally left, they left quietly because the organization was humming louder than their leadership had ever been. Ultimately, ambassadors were the ones that figured out how to leave the organization better than it had ever been when they found it because their character, get this, was never fused to their career. One of my favorite leaders is Thashonda Brown Duckett, and she gives an amazing talk on this. She talks specifically about her role as a CEO, and she says this. She says, look, there will be a day when I'm no longer the CEO of my company, but I will always be Thashonda Brown Duckett. I will always be that. And so then she gives this phrase, and she says it way better than I'll ever say it, but basically she says this. She says, I rent my title, but I own my character. Let me say that again. She said, I rent my title, but I own my character. When you rent your title, that means that somebody had your title before you. Somebody is going to have your title after you. And you are just the person that's holding it in the moment and you're caring for it today. But at some point, you know, and I know that someone else, they're going to have that title too. So you better come to terms with it. I better come to terms with it. But on the other end, we own our character. When we walk out the door, the only thing that walks out with us is our character. So the key for you and for me is to start thinking about our character more than our title. And so that takes us back to the idea of being a monarch. When you're a monarch and you look behind you and there's nobody there, then there's an empty bench, there's no one else to go in the game, you are indispensable. That is not a sign of your importance. That's more of a sign of your insecurity. The title has become your character. It's who you are. And so anyone else who comes in to even try to take over, well, that's a threat to your character. Ultimately, you and I have to decide when our title is gone, when you're no longer the owner, you're no longer the executive, you're no longer the high-flying entrepreneur, when your title is gone, how much of you as a person, as an individual, how much of you goes with it? Now, here's the obvious thing. Nobody wants to be a monarch. Everybody wants to be an ambassador. Everybody wants to leave the organization better than how they found it. Everybody wants that. You want that. I want that. And so how do you do that? I'm going to give you 3 things you can do right now to actually get much, much better at it. Number 1, ask yourself this blunt question. If I left the organization on Monday, who would be taking over for me on Tuesday? Now, if you can think of a name right away and a person comes to mind, a face, and they know they're the ones to take over for you, great. You are in great shape. But if you can't think of anybody, if a blank comes to mind, that is not flattery. That is a problem. If you can't think of anyone to take over for you after you're gone, that is a significant problem that you have created yourself. Number 2, Find the thing that only you can do, the thing that you're great at, the thing that you feel like you are the most capable person in the organization to do. Find that one thing and give it away. Teach it to somebody. Show somebody how to do it. Give them a chance to do it worse than you for a while until they learn how to do it better than you. That's what I mean. Give them an opportunity to grow into it. Break it down into its smallest pieces. Give them a chance to make mistakes along the way. Give them an opportunity to learn so that one day they're able to do the thing that only you can do better than you can do it. Number 3, take some time off. I'm serious. Take some time off now. Schedule a 2-week vacation. Just tell your team you are going off the grid and give them a chance to figure things out. Give them a chance to learn as they go. And then while you're on vacation, get this, while you're on vacation, check your own heart. How do you feel? Do you feel rested? Do you feel anxious? Is your eye twitching? How do you feel about being away from the organization that you love, the thing that you've built for so long? Heck, take a sabbatical. Take extended time off. Give your team a chance to grow and lead without you. And then check your own heart to figure out how you feel in the moment. If in the moment you do feel twitchy, don't be too hard on yourself. That's just information. And better realize it now while you're sitting in a lawn chair or sitting in a beach chair with your toes in the sand than the day you have to leave the organization and they're carrying you out because you're a monarch. Learning that you can let go. Learning that you can trust your team. That's a skill you have to learn early and a skill you have to learn often. Now imagine with me, what would it look like if your leadership wasn't indispensable but dispensable? What if you made yourself replaceable? What if you measured your success as a leader, not by you being the only person in the room that can do things, but on how well the team ran if you weren't there? What if you built a team that was so capable that they were able to run even if you weren't around? What would that look like? And what would it look like for you to actually start to build it now? Not wait till the end. Not wait till you retire, not wait till they drag you out. What would it look like? What would it take for you to build that kind of team today? Now, we've been talking about exits and we've been talking about leaving. And one of the things that you know and I know is that the last most important thing that the leader will do, the last most important thing that any leader will do, the final exam of leadership is the act of leaving. It's when you figured out how to separate your character from your career. And you've understood that leaving something better than how you found it is the ultimate test of great leadership. Your people are better. The company is better. Everything runs well once you step away. That is the ultimate test of leadership. But here's the thing. This is much easier said than done. Because oftentimes when it comes to exiting, when it comes to leaving, we treat it like a retirement errand. It's the very last thing we do on the way out. We think about it only when we have the maximum amount of pressure and the maximum amount of emotion and the minimum amount of time to actually plan. And so ultimately, if it doesn't go well, it's not us that pays for it. I mean, we're walking out the door, but it's our customers that pay for it. They feel it right away. It's our employees. They feel the pain. They oftentimes will leave the company if it's imploding. It's our suppliers. It's the people that we built relationships with for years that will feel the pain of a botched exit. If you believe in building something that matters, if you want to make a difference in your community, if you want to impact your friends and your family and your neighbors and your coworkers, you have to think about your exit. You have to think about the fact that building something that outlives you starts when you're still in the chair. So if you've been following along and you've heard me talk about leaving, you know that I've told a story about John. Now, John was the indispensable guy. And then as soon as he realized that he was indispensable and he left the company, he became, frankly, irreplaceable and the company collapsed. The ESOP, the employee-owned company, it just couldn't recover from a market dip, right? That was a sad story. But let me tell you a counter story. Let me tell you a story of Alan. This is another guy in a very similar area in a very similar year, literally starting almost the exact same year. 1977, he starts a building manufacturer company in his garage, and he grows it. But he does it differently than how John builds his company. He thinks about his company as a way to sort of give back. And so from the beginning, he has a different posture. And then get this, in 2006, he hired somebody. He hired somebody to slowly take over. And in 2010, he gave that person the job of the president. That was his job. But he found someone and he gave that person the job. And then in 2015, he gave that person the CEO role and he stepped out altogether. Now, here's the crazy part. Between 2006 and 2015, he didn't just sit around and make himself indispensable. What he did is he built a system that was bigger than himself. He set up meetings on a regular basis so the entire company understood exactly what they were doing and why. Why leadership development mattered, why customer service mattered, why excellence mattered, how he was able to pick the right products, how he was able to interact with the right customers, how he was able to grow his network. His company and his employees knew all of that. All the information didn't live secretly in his head. He built a system so the entire company understood why they existed and what they were there to do. And ultimately, when he stepped away and the company experienced the exact same dip that John's company did, they didn't fold. They exploded. They accelerated. In fact, they grew to be so big that, this is crazy, they actually ended up buying the factory that John's company was in. You see, what happened was they built something that was unbelievably beneficial to their community. While John fused his identity inside his title, Alan figured out a way to separate his career from his character. And ultimately, he was able to build a company that had an unbelievably crazy benefit to his local community. All because he understood the power of being an ambassador and not being a monarch. If you're like me and you hear a story like that, you might be rolling your eyes. Like, okay, good for you, Alan. You were the kind of guy that was able to build a company that turned into something massive because you're just so humble, because you're just so visionary, because you saw something that no one else saw and you're able to build something that no one else was able to build. It was easy. And it's easy for you and I to get resentful or to kind of be flippant about it. But the truth is, it wasn't easy for Alan. It was as hard for him as it is for you and I. There was plenty of other things for him to do, plenty of other things for him to focus on. But he did it day by day, year by year, meeting by meeting, hard decision by hard decision, not putting things off, but doing things now. You see, you and I have a tendency to put off this exit idea, put off leaving until the very last second. We procrastinate, and then we only think about leaving on the way to retirement, and then we rush the decision, and then the decision goes badly, and then everything collapses. That's kind of how it tends to work. And that's oftentimes where we get stuck because we tell ourselves we'll do it later. There's always something more important. There's always something more pressing. There's always something more urgent. But later never comes, ever. Later is always a lie. Always. The timing is never right, ever. The leaders who leave well are the ones who started 5, 10 years before they had to. They started building their exit, get this, while they're still in the chair. Okay, here's the big idea. Here's the principle. How you leave is the truest x-ray of who you've become. You can tell it in John's story. You see, John, his whole identity, who he became as he was leading, his whole identity was fused into his title. He was the company. And so as soon as he left, the company collapsed. And it said everything about who he was becoming as he was leading. He's becoming somebody more and more insecure, somebody more and more incapable of leaving the company better than how he found it. On the other side, Alan was becoming somebody totally different. He was becoming somebody whose identity was rooted in something bigger than his title. He was becoming somebody that could build a company that could run after he walked away. And the sign that he was a great leader, the idea that he built something incredible, proved itself as soon as he walked away. It exploded when he was gone. You see, for you and I, we oftentimes think about our legacy as the accumulation of stuff, more money, more power, more control, a bigger shadow. We think the more people that miss us when we were gone means that we were more important while we were there. But that's actually not the case. The real sign of a legacy is the development of the people while you were there. It's the capacity that you leave behind. That That's the true legacy. And Alan, he built that one day at a time, step by step, layer by layer, to the point when he actually left, the company did significantly better than when he was there because he built his exit while he was still in charge, while he was still in the chair. Okay, if you're ready to get started, I've got some steps for you. I want to give you 3 things that you can do right now to start building your exit while you're still in the chair. Ready? Let's go. All right, number 1, you want to find your successor now, as soon as you possibly can. Alan, he found his successor and waited 9 years to groom the person, to get the person ready to go. That's what you can do. But you don't have to wait 9 years. You can do it right now. You can find the person, then you can publicly start telling people that you're training the person to take over your position. And you give them incremental steps slowly so they prove themselves over time. And you just take as long as you need. But here's the important thing. You do it while you still have the authority and while you still have the energy. Do it now. Number 2, get the thing in your head out of your head. Your genius, your instincts, your decision-making ability, your ability to read the markets, your ability to understand the products, your ability to understand what customers need, your ability to network, all the things that make you, you. Find a way to get it out of your head and make it public knowledge. Set up a meeting structure. Set up regular documents that people will read and review. Set up a training system. Do something so that the ideas that are in your head that have made the company successful are now somehow in the community and everyone has access to them. That's absolutely critical. Number 3, start measuring the right thing. Start measuring your success, not based on whether or not you're missed when you're gone, but based on whether or not the organization runs after you step away. This is important. You've got to understand that your legacy is dependent on the organization continuing after you're gone. And so you are well served to find the right person, get the ideas out of your head, and start measuring your success, not by whether the company grows while you're there, but more importantly, whether the company grows when you're gone. But the truth is, right now, you are becoming a certain kind of leader. You're either becoming a monarch or you're becoming an ambassador. You're becoming somebody who can actually let go and the company thrives when you're gone, or you're becoming somebody who has no ability to let go at all and has to be dragged out at the very end. So ask yourself, if you left, would the company be better off? If the answer is yes, then you're doing a fantastic job. If the answer is no, you've got work to do. And the work starts today. Look, we've been talking about leaving this entire episode, and it's really important. If you haven't heard that from me yet, I'm going to say it again. How you leave is the leader's final exam. It is so important. In fact, it's one of the most important things that we teach at branches. We work with executives, entrepreneurs, and owners all over the world. One of the things that we do is we give them everything they need to grow. And I'm talking capital. I'm talking community. I'm talking content. I'm talking consulting. I'm talking coaching. All the things that you need to grow your business is found in branches worldwide. It's a highly selective, highly competitive program. But if you apply, you'll get a shot at a community that will walk with you for 30 years, the lifetime of your career. We want to see your business grow. We want to see you bless and benefit your community. Take a look at branches worldwide. If this is the first time this has ever come to mind for you, then this episode was written for you. And I've got an easy next step for you. 2 things. Number 1, like and subscribe. That way, you and I will continue to have this conversation over and over and over again, and we'll help you become the very best leader you possibly can be. And number 2, if you're ready for more information, if you're ready for deeper resources, then make sure you click the link in the show notes. That'll give you access to a PDF that'll help you go deeper and help you understand more about how to leave well so your organization is better than when you found it.